Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast, episode 91.
Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast with your host, Jack Mountain Bushcraft School founder and master Maine guide, Tim Smith.
I'm your host, Tim Smith. I'm a registered master Maine guide and have been a full-time outdoor instructor and guide since founding the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School in 1999. We help people become more skilled, more knowledgeable, more experienced, and more confident in the natural world through our bushcraft and guide training semester programs and multi-week canoe and snowshoe expeditions. You can check out the show notes to all of our podcasts at blog.jackmtn.com. If you're interested in learning more about our college-accredited and GI Bill-approved programs, visit the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School on the web at jackmtn.com. And check out our online network and digital learning academy at bushcraftschool.com. Hello and welcome back to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast. It's been a couple of months since we've recorded one of these, and it's been a busy couple of months. I'm your host, Tim Smith, and my life looks a lot different than it did in June when we published episode 89. Since then, I've moved, I've spent the summer off the grid, and I'm into a new spot here, directly adjacent to the field school. And this morning, I have the good fortune of sitting down with my old friend, Colin Clifford. How are we doing today, Colin?
Great.
Colin just returned from a 10-day solo Allagash trip, and we want to talk about that. And we'll probably do another one of these pretty soon with getting everybody up to date with our current events and everything like that. But today we're going to focus on the solo Allagash trip. So, just got back.
Yep.
You were out for 10 days.
Yep.
Historically low water levels in northern Maine this summer.
Yeah, it was quite low. The originally I wanted to do the whole thing. I was going to do the 21-day practicum, and so I was going to put in at T-Loss, basically do the trip that we did 2 years ago.
Yeah, the 99-mile Allagash Wilderness Waterway.
Yeah, but just planning and everything, and just how everything worked out, and the real killer was the fact that the water was just too low on the river. So that kind of put a nail in that coffin. But I still wanted to do a substantial trip, a substantial solo, to where I could test my skills, basically in the same spirit of the 21-day practicum.
Yeah.
So I kind of just met halfway there and decided to go the 10 days. And
what half of 21 would be like 10 and a half.
Yeah. So I went.
I don't want to be too much of a stickler about math here, but
well, math wasn't my best subject, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think I got a real good taste of that. I got a lot out of it.
So you went from here. You put in at Churchill Dam, which is sort of the end of the headwater lakes. If you're doing a one-way trip on the Allagash downriver, that signifies the end of the headwater lakes, the beginning of the river. It's a great spot. I spent a bunch of time there this summer. Love it.
Yep.
Great little rips to pole, and then obviously Chase Rapids right there, and it's dam controlled, so you can run that even if the rest of the river, the lower river, is too low.
Yeah, and I actually did run Chase Rapids.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of funny because I put in, I showed up a little late the night before, and the next morning there was a group that was camped next to me, the campsite right at Churchill Dam, and there's a parking lot there, so my truck was parked in the parking lot, and one of the guides there, I guess he had someone sick in his party. Someone wasn't feeling well, so he noticed that I had a Maine guide sticker on my truck, and he came up to me and asked me if I would be willing to run Chase Rapids, one of the boats. And I I've run Chase Rapids before, and so I was like, yeah. I mean, my confidence was already to the point where I knew I could pull it. So I agreed to it, and I pulled one of their people down the river. So I actually guided the Allagash. And the guy actually tipped me $20 because he was very impressed with polling, which he didn't even know existed. There was a guy from California who had no idea about polling. Or
California is like that's a town in southern Maine.
No,
down by Kittery.
It's a little south of Route 2.
It's south of Route 2.
Yeah,
I got a bone up in my geography. That's awesome. That's also a great story. Like, I've never heard anything positive coming out of having like a guide sticker on a vehicle, and that's a great one.
Yeah.
Like I have that registered Maine poacher one on mine, and I get hassled by game wardens all the time. They're like, "Oh, what are you hunting?" I'm like, "Anything that's out of season." "Oh, wait, are you a..." "Oh, I shouldn't have said that." That's great. That's a fun rip to pole. It's, for those of you out there in podcast land, it's about 6 to 7 miles. Only the first 1.5 to 2 miles are super challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, it's not the world's biggest rapid, but it's really shallow. Mm-hmm. So like the traditional Maine way of ascending, descending rapids with a pole is super useful there, because sometimes you come around the corner and all of a sudden there's just no water. There's nowhere to go. He
was amazed that you could just stop right in the water. He was like, he couldn't believe it. And when I was snubbing down, I was explaining to him, and then I would ferry across the river, and he was like, "Wow, that was really smooth." And I would just kind of.
Did you squint at him? Then?
I was squinting. I had
you're goddamn right. It
is. My Mel Gibson voice, or my, and So it was pretty. It's really awesome when you can show people, because and even the guide, the guide there that asked me, he was very impressed too. He was, and actually, I don't want to name any names or any organizations, because I don't know to what degree he, what they.
This is a conspiracy theory?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
we're gonna blame anything bad that happened on Big Chip.
I don't know. I don't know how much they want to attach themselves to us. You know what I mean? They might have a reputation for it. So, but anyway, he was very serious. He wanted very serious about getting my information. They run a camp, like a summer camp, and they have a canoe. He was the head of the canoe program there, and he was, very adamant, talking about how he wanted to extend the canoe program, and he wanted to include, polling.
That's fantastic. And what a nice feather in your cap, because I know you've been at this for a number of years now, learning and,
mm-hmm.
Working hard. And we've spent a lot of weeks on remote rivers together.
Yep.
And, it's fun to see somebody go. I mean, if I really thought about it, I could probably remember that first day where, you were polling, and the first day standing up on a canoe, and you're like, whoa, this is...
I keep pulling over to the right.
Well, to the point where, then running the Bonaventure and the St. Croix, and then, guiding on the Allagash and stuff. And it's just great to see. That's awesome. I'm excited for you.
Yeah, which kind of ties into, kind of the point, with this. The fact that I had decided to do this was the fact that, I had been on so many trips with you. I probably, if you count snowshoe trips and Cree trips and canoe trips, I've probably been on over a dozen trips with you. You and then Chris and Blake and all those guys.
The usual suspects of the hashtag full-time lifestyle.
Yes, absolutely. So, the fact that I had been on those trips and I learned so much, the next step, for me was to do my own trip.
It's a different animal when you're the guy in charge,
completely
and it's a different animal too when you're solo.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And obviously, when you're solo, you're also the person in charge. Usually,
yeah. Well, sometimes. I'll tell you what. Mother Nature is always in charge.
Yes.
That's kind of one thing that you really learn. That's probably lesson number one you learn is.
Years ago, my good friend Greg Belanger, after a spring canoe expedition, took his boat and went up to the Bonaventure and ran it solo. And I remember when he came back, his boat was a little banged up, I'm not going to lie. I don't think he had the easiest trip. But I remember exactly what he said. He said, when the second you push off from shore, the river owns you.
Oh, yeah.
You exist at the river's behest.
Absolutely.
Meaning, if the river wants to, crush you, ruin your day, it's going to do that.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's something that in our modern world, we're so used to being in control of everything. And, you have to relinquish that sense of control.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't, you're dangerous. If you're like, I'm going to go today, come hell or high water today, I'm getting to the top of the mountain. That's when there's a lightning storm.
Yeah.
That's when it's just not advisable to do that.
Oh, yeah.
And then you had that experience on this trip. Right?
I did. Yeah, actually. So I pushed pretty hard. I actually made it pretty far. I think, you had, before I pushed out, before I set off, we went over the map.
And you went to, your destination for the trip was the headwater lakes of the Allagash because there just wasn't enough water in the river, correct?
Yes. I wanted to check out as much as possible. My objective was to check out as many campsites, to go as far as I could, that the weather would allow, excuse me. I wanted to, I didn't want to have my ego get into it because, like we were talking about, it that's dangerous.
When your ego is writing checks your body can't cash.
Absolutely. Because
it's like there's a danger zone.
There is a danger.
And when you're doing that, it's like you're on almost like a highway to that danger zone.
Yeah, exactly. And
if you were in New York State, you'd be on a throughway to the danger zone. Or if you were in New Jersey, you could be on the parkway to the danger zone.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. Should I continue?
I think our audience may have heard this before. But so I pushed out pretty far, and I got as far as Breezy Point campsite from Churchill Dam, heading south.
And Breezy Point, if you're an old Allagash hand, it's the new campsite on Eagle Lake.
Yep.
And my good friend and Eagle Lake Ranger Ed Pallas has said that there's enough firewood there for people to go and have a raging fire every day for the next 5 years. So if you're going to do an Allagash trip, stay at Breezy Point.
Yeah.
There's tons of wood there.
It's
like a giant tinderbox.
It's a giant tinder bundle is what it is. They have a giant pile of wood, and it's all dry, and but it was a little stumpy, primitive, but it was nice. It was pleasant. I really enjoyed it. But leaving that place, the wind was the next morning when I woke up. I had broken down camp, and the wind was starting to pick up a little bit, and on one side, it was pretty choppy, but the other side, where I was heading, the direction where I was heading, was a lot calmer. So,
so you were sucked into believing I'll be fine.
There's
no way this wind's gonna get me.
It was a definite miscalculation I will say.
That's only happened to me like 326 times.
Yeah.
But it's good though. Like, you know, if we have a joke around camp that like pain is a really good teacher, right? You only get slapped once. Like a little kid will only touch a hot wood stove once. You burn your fingertip, you learn your lesson.
Yeah.
So without getting kind of smacked around a bit by Mother Nature, some of the lessons maybe aren't learned to the degree that, you know, when you have to endure a bit of pain and suffering or, you know, just sort of like one of those, oh my God moments when the waves are 3 feet higher than the gunnel of your canoe.
Yeah.
That drives the point home.
Yeah. And that's basically what happened. I got pushed out into the middle of the lake. I was trying to stay on the shore, on the western shore as much as I could to let the trees kind of block the wind. But I was also getting pounded by the waves coming straight at me. I couldn't figure out if it was a headwind or you know, which would have been coming from the north or a westerly wind. And now kind of looking at it, you know, by the geography, you know, the wind probably wrapped around the bowl of the lake, and you know, so it was coming at me from both directions. But I did kind of have a moment where I was kind of sucked down in the middle of the lake, and I kind of had a little bit of a scare there. And
they're a little bit of a scare when you're on your own and there's nobody there to help you.
Scare.
That's a whole different animal than when there's a big group of people and you realize that, you know, there is safety in numbers.
Yeah.
That your decision-making process, my decision-making process, really anybody's, when you're solo, is you err much more on the side of caution.
Yeah.
Because you realize, like, I'm the only help I've got.
Yeah.
So it's just a different experience than being with the group.
Yeah. And in all honesty, you know, what you know, I did make the right decision. I decided to just, when I did have a chance to turn around, I turned my boat around, I took the tailwind, and I floated to the next campsite. And even if there wasn't a campsite, I could have, you know, floated until I got to land, and then, you know, I probably would have had to bushwhack a campsite. But the main thing was to just let go and not try to, you know, just to kind of let nature take you where it wants to take you, you know, because if you try to fight against it, you're going to lose that battle.
Well, only like 100 times out of 100.
101 times out of 100.
Again, I'm no math guy, but the numbers line up.
Yeah. But I mean, it was, you know, I had made a lot of right decisions. You know, I got it all out there. I got rain, so I worked on my wet weather fire. I got, and you know, that's another thing that was very, you know, kind of intimidating. Wet weather fire, you know, like, because when the weather's wet and, you know, you're not gonna get a fire, you know, it's you know, there's a part of you that just wants to just kind of give up. You know, I was actually at Churchill Dam, you know, like I could have like gone into my truck, turned it on, and just like let the heat just set in the heated truck and let it run, you know, until, you know, until like my clothes dry, and then crawl into my tent and just not have, you know, I could have taken a lot of ways out in that situation, but I decided to, you know, I was like, you know what, no, I come here for a reason. I have these skills. These skills are in me, you know, I know them. I just have to apply them, you know, and I just have to just, you know, if I fail, then just try again. But, you know, I'm going to get a fire because I know how to get a fire. And so I did, and I got a fire.
Yeah, in some ways, I think traveling solo on the land forces you to face, I don't want to say face your fears, because I don't want to make it seem like the boogeyman is out there hiding, but it forces you to sort of like face your anxieties, and it forces you have to perform. There's no one else to rely on. You can only rely on yourself.
Yep.
So like you're going to keep going. You're going to keep working towards getting that wet weather fire until you've got it, until you've boiled your drinking water for the next day, until your food is cooked.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, is you don't really have the, you know, the affordability of, I can put this off till tomorrow. I don't need, I got enough, I got a little bit of water in my canteen. The dishes can wait till tomorrow. Hey, I'll just take a few handfuls of mixed nuts. I won't eat tonight. That's a recipe for disaster. You don't do your dishes, then you still have to do them in the morning. And you're just asking for wildlife to come and, peruse through your stuff. It's just going to slow you down the next morning. If you don't boil your drinking water, you're going to get behind on your hydration, and then you're going to be less, it's all going to come back to you,
Yeah.
If you don't eat, then you're not going to have the proper fuel.
There's just certain things that you have to accomplish on a daily basis.
You have to do it.
To live the woods life.
Absolutely.
You just can't, you can't fudge it because it's hard.
Absolutely. But, doing that, my proficiency went through the roof. From the beginning of the trip, it was taking me forever to boil water. Even though I've done it 100 times, being a part of guide groups and with us. But the thing is that, when you're in a group, all the chores are split. So you got, you might be the guide team, but then you just, everybody gets firewood, and so everyone gets like 2 sticks, and all of a sudden you got, in a 5-person group, you got 10, pieces of firewood to work with.
Yeah, that's the challenge of solo travel, right? It's like so many chores, and you
gotta get all the firewood, and I wanted to get enough firewood to boil all my water and cook all my food and do all my dishes, and also make food, breakfast in the morning and coffee, because I didn't want to be wandering around the woods in the morning when I'm all groggy, looking for firewood
or a Starbucks
exactly
in the middle of the Allagash.
Yeah, which I looked furiously for a Starbucks, and
only Dunkin's.
Only Dunkin's.
The Circle K.
There's Dunkin's on every corner, but they have not yet reached. Starbucks has not reached the far north woods of Maine.
Yeah, that's good though. It's a good self knowledge to know. So, before and after, big picture. Like if you had to comment on changes that you felt kind of in yourself, not in too much of a touchy-feely way, but what did you learn? What was the most valuable lesson you learned, and what do you think the most valuable aspect of growth that you experienced was?
Well, just being in a position of making big decisions. I will say that, before I went out, there was as you get closer and closer to the date that you pick, there's kind of anxiety picks up. You start to kind of worry about, just every little thing that could happen, that could go wrong. You really, there's kind of, I don't know if anybody knows of Bob Proctor. He's like a kind of a motivational speaker, but he talks about doing things that make you uncomfortable for growth. He talks about the terror barrier, which is like, right before you're about to do something that you plan to do, there's this barrier where you start to feel terror. You everything in you is trying to prevent you from doing this thing, and that's when like this is, like logically that you can do it. You just have to plan everything out and just follow that plan, and you will do it because you can do it. Like I've been on enough trips to where I know that I can do this. I have the skills, I have the knowledge, I can do this. This will be more difficult. It will be painful, but I will get tremendous growth out of it. So kind of working through that and just kind of stepping into that and, and just kind of stepping into the unknown a little bit and stepping into the discomfort is, it's very hard, especially when you get closer to that date, because you know that it's going to suck. There's going to be parts that suck about it.
Did it suck?
Parts of it did suck. And you know what? I wouldn't have it, any other way, because it was extremely humbling.
Without challenge, without some sort of adversity, there's very little growth, right? Like unless, use a weightlifting analogy, unless you're stressing those muscles and breaking them down, they don't grow back stronger.
Absolutely. And if you don't use it, you lose it. You know what I mean? I came out here in the fall of 2016 with you, and I have been, constantly. Any trip that I can get on, I get on. Any time that I can do a trip, I've been trying to do it at least one trip a year. At least one river trip and one snowshoe trip a year. And that's because I want to continue to grow my skills. Mm-hmm. These skills are, sacred to me. I believe in them 100%. I not only think that, they're important to... they're precious to preserve, just because it ties us to who we are, who we really are as human beings. But they carry over to real life. I mean, the practicality of it, it's such an amazing. Like we talk about the hierarchy of needs. When you have your baseline, you can't get to the higher levels of your needs if you don't have your baselines.
Right.
So
Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Google that. You'll see this big thing. He was a psychologist, I think in the 1950s, but basically said that until we've met our needs for like food and water, then it's not really worth, you can't really focus on like self-actualization and things like that when you're hungry and thirsty and you're not sleeping warm.
Yeah.
Right? So like first you take care of your basic needs, then you take care of your relationship needs, then you take care, but it all builds on each other. There's a great graphic. Google it. You'll find it. Again, Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it should make it really clear.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and that's another thing too, is like you realize when you're out on your own and you have no one to talk to, you really appreciate your relationships, and you really appreciate the people that take time and effort to be in your life.
Yeah, for sure. You never like appreciated your loved ones more than when you're all alone.
When you're all alone, like you're
talking to a volleyball.
Yeah, exactly. You just a lot of my friends and family were worried about me before I went out. They have kind of, I think, obviously they're worried. They don't know what you're doing.
Like, why would anybody want to go by themselves?
Why would their only reference to that is the movie Into the Wild, and so I think that's what they think, I was doing, I just have that moment where I'm just yelling, society.
Into the Wild was the Pauly Shore movie where he went into the Stone Age. Is that?
Was that when they? I thought he went to that that glass bubble and.
That wasn't Into the Wild.
No,
Biodome.
No, I don't think Biodome was Into the Wild.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, it's interesting for me. Colin got back yesterday afternoon. Our new spot. Here we're right outside the North Main Woods gate at the field school. So when he came back, you can always tell when someone's had that experience, definitely a solo tripping experience that I highly recommend people get once they're ready for it. I mean, you got to know your stuff first.
You got to be ready for it. And what I did, you have to be ready for. But if you come and do a course here and you learn some of the skills that we do, you are set to go into your backyard and do maybe a little overnight with maybe with just a tarp and a wool blanket and an axe and a knife and a few matches. You can do a lot more than you think. I mean, we are meant to do these things. That's kind of crazy is we just learned these skills and perfected them over millennia. And it's kind of crazy because it takes that long for these skills that work so well to develop, and then it takes only a couple of generations for them to be completely lost.
Yeah, or even less.
Yeah,
one generation, maybe two.
Yeah, I mean, we go up with the Cree, every couple of years. We've been up there quite a bit, and that's basically, they're basically the experts.
They're the pros.
They're the pros at that.
To use that athletic analogy, like when you go up to Ujay Boogamoo, you're going to the show.
Yeah, the show. There's levels to this. There's levels to this game, and they're at the highest level. And even they are, since they've kind of, I mean, maybe we can do a show or a podcast on that, but they kind of have one foot in the bush and one foot in modernity, and they're kind of
Wait, like pregnant?
Maternity? Paternity. This is modernity.
Okay.
I think ma is what you kind of took that and ran with.
Something like that. Yeah, it's challenging, like a foot in two worlds. Yeah, that's
and they're very, especially a lot of the elders that grew up in the bush are very concerned with, losing their culture, losing these skills so rapidly.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the kids are, they got their cell phones now, and a lot of
their kids want what kids everywhere want.
You can't blame them. You can't blame them.
No, there's no blame at all. It's just it's changing times.
Yeah.
So I could tell I've got to run here pretty soon. Got to go do my workday stuff. But it was obvious to me when you pulled up, you walked up. You can always tell somebody who's coming back from like a solo trip, right? Because the way they walk a little bit taller, their shoulders or their chest is stuck out a little bit more. They're a little more humble too, right?
Yeah.
That's humbling especially solo travel is very humbling because you realize that Mother Nature owns you.
Absolutely.
And that, we're pretty fragile creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And also too, you realize like the value of the relationships that you have. And and I think when I do it, I'm humble that way that I miss people when I'm out. But one of the huge benefits of spending time alone in the backcountry is just, I think in the modern world, people lose the appreciation for a lot of the things that make life awesome and worth living. Like you lose the ability to really appreciate your closest relationships. Like especially now, end of the COVID, people have been like holed up with loved ones or family members or both. And you're like, just 5 minutes away from this person. Mm-hmm. But then go take 10 days away from that person and man, you realize that those relationships they're the most valuable thing that we could ever have.
Absolutely.
Like much more so than like something shiny and gold. Like who cares, after 10 days in the woods by yourself, you're like, I'd give it all. If I had all the gold in the world, I'd give it all up to spend another couple hours.
I'll even music sounded better when I was leaving. I was listening to music when I pulled in, and it was
like I think I remember when you pulled in, it was Rebecca Black's Friday.
Yes, and
it just sounds better, doesn't it?
Yes, because I listened to that on repeat, and after a while it starts to become background noise, and you don't appreciate.
Hey, never to me.
You just don't. Yeah, I know. I mean, genius is genius. Genius recognizes genius, but when you come back, the difference between that, the music, just relationships, music, everything that maybe you were maybe you just needed a break from, and and you're kind of cutting yourself off. You need that time, like these kinds of trips, these kinds of things, the benefits that you get coming back. I mean, it's countless. Things you don't even consider.
It's a reset of your personal baseline.
Absolutely.
And you just appreciate everything about it. I always love at the end of the season, I go home and I'm kind of cradled with the warmth of my family, and I'm sitting back on like a couch, and you're like, this is like a chair, but it's soft.
Yeah.
And then I just pump my fist in the air and I'm like, go humans, we're awesome. We invented couches. Take out food.
And then your family is like looking at you weird, in silence.
They're calling the number, and then the van comes to get you.
Yeah.
It's all padded.
Yeah. Wow, this is company too.
It's happened a million times. Well, thanks for sharing your experience with us.
Yeah.
It sounds like it was a great experience, a powerful experience, and one that you'll probably continue to draw lessons from for a number of years.
Absolutely.
That's the beauty of wilderness travel, the beauty especially of solo wilderness travel, is that you're forced to confront who you are right then in that moment. The masks that we wear in the modern world sort of fall away, and you're faced with this big full-length mirror showing you exactly who you are.
Yeah. And
how you deal with that in the long run is a huge part of the process. But anyway, thanks, Colin. Thank you to you out there in podcast land for listening, and we'll hit you back again soon with another one. Have a great day. You have been listening to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast. For more information on our professional wilderness guide training programs that are college accredited and GI Bill approved, visit us on the web at jackmtn.com.